welcome Bears fans and members. We are going to preview another great classic game from the 1990s. It's 1996, and we've got the Bears versus the Illawarra Steelers. The game's at North Sydney Oval, and it's going to be on Foxtel at 12 p.m. tomorrow. That's 12 p.m. Friday the 15th. Make sure you get onto the Foxtel, watch the game, and see the guys go around. Now, I've got a couple of legends that played in that game that I'm going to talk to, and we're going to talk about all of their teammates as we look back at it. So thanks for joining us. And again, we're brought to you by Joe Musa from Stonemasons and Landscapes, and also the Norse Group. Joining me today, I've got Mark Soden and Benny Eichen. Great to have you both along. Welcome, guys.
Hey, JT. Hey, Sodo.
Benny, how are you, mate?
I'm good.
Yeah, JT.
Yeah, great to have you. Now, let's just talk a little bit generally. Sodo, we'll start with you, mate. So many games played for the North Sydney Bears. Can you just reminisce a little bit? When did you start at the club? How many games did you play?
Yeah, I played schoolboys, got picked from there. Came to North Sydney, 5th of January, 1987, same day as the one Gary Larson. Very proud to be a one-team, one-club man. Sort of like that as a junior. Yeah, I think I ended up playing the third most games ever for North. I saw somewhere about 180 first grade games, and I looked like I've played every one of them with my head. Yeah, just had a great time. Great bunch of blokes, and the evolution during the 90s was incredible. It started happening around 89, I think, when Steve Martin came along, and he was very revolutionary. He really gave me an understanding of the game I never had as a junior. Like, I just sort of played. I played what I watched. You know, you see stuff on TV. But his coaching was really exceptional. And it's a shame he couldn't have stayed longer. No, but anyway, things happen.
Yeah, they do. Now, Benny, what about you, mate? Quite different in that the Bears was your second club, but you were very young when you joined. How old were you, and what was it about the Bears that made you make the trip down from the Gold Coast to North Sydney?
So 1995, JT, first year out of high school, I think I ended up playing about 3 first-grade games for the Gold Coast Seagulls, and around the time State of Origin was taking place, you know, there was that Super League war erupt, and the ARL had decided Super League aligned players weren't going to play for either state, which ruled out the Brisbane Broncos for Queensland, which seriously meant who the hell are they going to pick? As it turned out, there was a bunch of Nevilles that were there. We all got selected, and I was one of them. We won the series. I got to the end of that season, and the Gold Coast Seagulls folded. They didn't have enough cash to keep going. They were, I think, reborn as the Gold Coast Chargers, but I had got myself a manager who just happened to be the manager of Brett Dallas, right? Sam Ayub, who ended up at the Bears with us in 96. But he took me down to Sydney. I think I went and saw a couple of clubs. And from the moment I walked through the door at the Bears, one, I knew Tony Hearn had been there. Gary Larson was there. Billy Moore was there. Really professional setup. You remember back in those days, we had sort of individual videotapes and systems under John Mulgan and Peter Louis, the coach. Anyway, I was suitably impressed. I thought, this is where I've got to be. So at the end of 95, having put on about 15 kilos in 6 months, packed up the bags, headed down the highway and started my first pre-season with the Bears, looking very, very fit.
This is awesome, because I had written down here just a few questions to ask you boys, and the next line said, Benny, you turned up quite fat. Is that correct?
Seriously. Like, prior to getting to the Bears, I played for the junior Kangaroos, right? So I started 1995 at 84 kilos, which is about where I should have been. I finished 1995, the season, so 6 months later, at 98 kilos. And Stu Kelly, who's a good mate of mine, was in that junior Kangaroos team. Anyway, I went around to his house many years later. So that photo in 95 was taken, I reckon, maybe a month before I arrived at North Sydney. It was one of those, you know, those photos where you're all standing in one line. And, mate, I don't know what I was thinking, but I was wearing like size 32 shorts, and I was clearly a size 42, that the pants were cutting into my legs. So I look back on that, I thought to myself, how the hell did I get through that first pre-season at the Bears? Because if you remember, my first season was the first season of former SAS soldier Danny Harley. So he effectively tortured us for the next 3 months. Now, the good news is that I arrived at 98 kilos at the North Sydney Bears in, I think, November 1995. And by February 1996, just as the season was about to start, I hit 88 kilos. So the training paid off.
It was amazing. It was amazing to see you lose that weight, and it was a long, long, tough pre-season. You would have been thinking at that time, I cannot make a career out of this. No chance.
Well, mate, you remember the players we had. I mean, Soto was super fit. You were super fit. Then we had those idiots that used to run 18 on the beep test, you know, Billy Moore and Gary. Seriously, what was I doing there? But I sort of persisted, and everyone sort of dragged me along, and I'm very thankful for it.
It was good. They were great times. All right, Soto, let's talk a little bit. We'll get on to this game, but I want to talk just a little bit generally. Firstly, the amount of tackles you made in the game. Like I've gone back and watched a few of the games that have been televised lately, and it has been great to watch. But something that stands out to me like a sore thumb is just the amount of work you get through in a game. Obviously, opposition teams are running at you whenever they can, but the amount of tackles you make, it's so impressive, mate. How did you do that? Seriously.
Well, JD, as a kid, I was probably it's something that doesn't need a big skill, it just needs a big want. And as a kid, I tried to teach myself to tackle with both shoulders. If you see Jeff Tuvey's right ear, it's all cauliflower because he go and tackle with his right ear. But I digress. But no, I enjoyed it. I like doing my bit of work. And just before you come, I've been playing halfback. They fiddled with going up, backwards and up, and as in the second line and where you go. And
yeah,
I really enjoyed the front line. I enjoyed the chase. I love dummy marker chasing. And I always feel like I had to do it for my mates, and I had to work because they were working for me, or they were doing this or they were doing that. It was all about just getting your share of play and being effective as best you can. And I loved it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, those of you watching this, when you watch this game, as you said, Friday, 12 p.m., it's quite amazing how many tackles Soto gets through. And one of them that stands out, Soto, is a guy by the name of Darren Fritz, played for the Illawarra Steelers and ended up coming to the North Sydney Bears. And I don't know if you guys were mates beforehand, but you lined him up and drove your shoulder straight in his guts. Absolutely superb tackle it was. Really one for the coaches out there to show everybody. Really impressive, mate.
Thanks, JT. Well, his stomach was nearly as big as his mullet. His mullet just came forward as I tackled him. But a lot of people say to me, you tackle the big blokes. But to me, it's always been relative. I've always been the same height and size in comparison to the teams I was playing for. So it just was no different. Like the big Spud, he thought he was so tough, but he fell over you like a half-open pocket knife. You hit him around the waist and he just closed.
Pocket knife. All right, now let's talk about some of the forwards that you played with, because it really was an impressive forward pack, and they really dominated a lot of teams. And most teams that turned up to North Sydney Oval got dominated by the boys. Who are the ones that stand out for you, Soto?
Jade, it's really hard to say, mate. They're all good. You know what? I felt so honoured. I mean, I went to hooker because you were coming. Pete Mulholland said to me, Soto, you're not going to play halfback. And I was a bit offended. I've been doing it since I was 6. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. But also, in being part of that pack, I felt so powerful because I had these guys that we would do anything for each other. And it was a team within a team, and we just wanted to set up for you guys. And then as you're talking about some of those balls that blokes like, we forgot how good a ball player blokes like Billy Moore with a short pass, and Josh winding up, running that defence, Daisy, just powerful. And I just loved being a part of that, what I call our own little team. Someone would switch in and they'd become part of it. Float a couple of back row games. We'll see Chris Caruana, it was a special part of the field to be. And I feel like I've been there my whole life, my whole career. Yeah,
you're dead right. There's some great highlights in this game. Billy Moore, some really nice passing in a couple of the tries that we score. He throws the pass to you for one try, Benny, really nicely, and throws one out to Brett Dallas on the wing. Also a beautiful offload from
They were
David Fairley. What was that, mate?
They were both flukes. You know that.
A real nice offload from David Fairley. Some very great skill from the guys. Benny, let's just talk a little bit about yourself, okay? So we've alluded to Brett Dallas a couple of times. You played in a backline that became pretty impressive in a short space of time when yourself, Mick Buettner and Brett Dallas all turned up to the club in 1996. A bit of speed and a bit of skill there. You must have enjoyed that.
It was, I mean, to be fair, I look back now and realise how lucky I was, how lucky we all were. But at 19, you kind of just, you know what it's like. You get up, put your undies on, then your shoes and your training gear, go and work for the day, come home, eat dinner and try not to let anyone down. So I probably didn't appreciate as much as I should have in the moment, being so young, exactly what I was a part of. But certainly now when I look back at that 4 years of my life, I realise we had a great team, and to think that, Mick Buettner, Brett Dallas arrived in the same year as me, Greg Florimo, and of course our fearless leader, Jason Taylor at halfback, not forgetting probably the most underrated player I've ever played with, Nigel Roy, all in the one back line, made us pretty effective and dangerous. And Sato's already spoken about the quality of the forward pack and how good they were. It was no wonder that we had as much success as we did over that 4 years. But I learned a lot. I probably, if there's one thing I regret about my time at the Bears, is that I sort of didn't arrive at that point where I fully appreciated how to get into the grind for the length of a season. You were very good at that. Sato was very good at that. I think I left by about the time I was 23, 24. So I was maybe 1 or 2 years away from that. Then I could have really enjoyed, I think, more what we were doing and how we were playing. But certainly as a young back, to think that you're a part of a group of players that good was pretty special. I was very lucky, yeah.
You mentioned Nigel Roy. In this game, Matt Sears actually gets a head knock early in the game and doesn't come back on the field, and Nigel Roy plays the whole game at fullback and really plays a great game. And Brett Dallas scores a few tries himself. You actually lived with BD, Benny?
I lived in the same block of units. So when I first moved to Sydney, as I've already said, Brett and I had the same manager. So he found us a unit in a suburb called Drummoyne, and then the other guy who, funnily enough, moved into the same apartment block, I think there was only about 12 units all up, was Matt Singh. So, of course, Brett and I used to go to training together a lot. I think I know where you're kind of leading me here.
All managed by Sam AU.
No, Matt wasn't. Matt wasn't. Right. No, but Brett
and
I.
He owned that building.
And, of course, look, I say this respectfully, but I don't think you could probably get two wider guys on the planet than Ben Ikin and Brett Dallas. But we used to drive around in Brett's BMW with black tinted windows, lowered with, I think they were about 28-inch rims, if they're even legal, listening to Cypress Hill. Do you remember those days?
Yeah, we know. BD was not white, right?
Mate, to look at, yes, but I think deep down in his soul, no. And because I got on that bandwagon, and I've got no doubt, because you couldn't see in the car, that wherever we went, what hopped out of the car, you were not expecting to see from how the car looked and the music that was coming out of the trunk. Yeah, it was a little weird, but truth be told, Brett and I became really close. He's a quiet bloke, as you know, doesn't talk a hell of a lot. But I don't, in all my time playing the game, even watching the game now through a sort of a different lens, you guys might agree with me. Have you ever played with anyone quicker across 40 meters than Brett Dallas?
Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the speed he shows in this game, he scores the first try of the game. You've got to watch this game and watch him go. Nobody was going to stop him from scoring this try.
I remember he came back from an injury one year, and remember we used to do the gates, electronic gates over 40 metres?
Yeah.
I've never seen anyone run this time before, but he came back, hadn't trained for it felt like a month, 6 weeks, and he lined up to do that 40-metre sprint. He was looking $1 million, as he always did, and he ran 4.52 through the gates. And still to this day, you know, I've been at the Broncos and, you know, in Origin camps and seen these tests done. I've never seen anyone run that quick. It was just grease lightning.
That's impressive that you remember that time, mate. Very.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about another player who spent a fair bit of time in the backs as well. However, on this day in 1996, he played at lock, Chris Caruana, Smoke. He was a versatile player, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. I loved him. I loved playing with him. He's one of those guys that just gave you his everything. And, mate, Jimmy Lyle, all the style, he's a funny man. But I tell you what, he's the sort of bloke that I would really be first. I want him first in the trenches with me. One day I was renovating my house and was in between when we were full time, in between trainings, and I said, "I got boys, we'd finish weights. I got 3 tons of soil out the front of my house. I got to take it around the back." Anyway, Lisa said, "Mark, come on, you got to come in. I've got some dinner lunch for you before you go to training again." Anyway, Smokes turned up with his own trailer, his own wheelbarrow, his own shovel, his shirt off, and he got around. He had 2 tons taken around before I even knew he was there. He was up the incline, and then he's all sweaty, and I went, "That's Smoke, you know, that's him." But on the field, I don't think he got the accolades that, you know, he was just an ultimate utility player. But I just, one of those guys I love playing with, because like that, he'll just give it for you. So
I had to look in that game that we watched, you know, it reminded me again how good he was. It also brought back an interesting memory for me. That year, 1996, he could also play in the centre, Smoke, which is the position I was playing. And there must have been a period of the season where I wasn't playing all that well. And Smoke had offered to give me a lift home from training, right? So I jump in the probe. Remember the Ford Probe?
Absolutely.
I think he paid cash for it. Was all he owned. Had all his clothes in the trunk.
Slept in that, didn't he?
Yes, slept in the probe. Anyway, so I get in the probe at North Sydney Oval. He's taking me back to Drummoyne. Anyway, it was the early days of mobile phones, but he had more than the mobile phone. He had the hands-free, right? So he's got the phone set up in the car, hands-free, and he gets this call. Him and I are driving along, having this nice conversation about life. It's one of his mates from Woolloomooloo that he has a steam with in the morning. Rings him up, says, "How you going, big fella?" He said, "Yeah, no, I'm going good." Can't remember the bloke's name. Anyway, they chat for a little while. He said, "Mate, where are you playing this week?" He said, "I'm on the bench." He said, "Mate, why aren't you in the centres?" He said, "Benny Aitken's playing in the centres." He said, "You're kidding me, mate. That bloke can't play." I'm in the car. Smoke's done the old, "Ah, ha, ha, Benny Aiken." You hear that? Did not faze him one bit. We just kept driving and chatting and kept talking with his mate from Woolloomooloo. Incredible. I had the shoulder slump for the rest of the
week. Isn't that it? Like, isn't it amazing that you spend this time with these people and you do so many great things on the footy field, but the things you remember mostly and most fondly are those sorts of stories and the personalities in the dressing room. It's only in rugby league do you meet people like Chris Caruana. What an absolute legend.
Can I just digress back to that guy from Woolloomooloo, Benny?
Yeah.
We're doing weights, me, Reeves, and Smoke one day. We're on the mats doing our sit-up session at the end, and Chris walks in, Smoke. He walks in and says, say his name's Johnny Long. He said, "You know Johnny Long from Woolloomooloo?" I gone, no, South. Didn't you go to school with him? I said, "Mate, South Dubbo High, Sydney, wherever you're talking about." He said, "His sisters, Paris Morals, twins, all 3 of them." Reeves crawled out of the gym laughing. He couldn't stand up. Crying he was. It was very funny.
Twins, all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Benny, let's talk a little bit more about the details of your game, because in attack, it was a ripper. But you marked up on Paul McGregor, so you scored a bag full, but he scored a bag full as well. What are your memories? Because I know they're pretty strong.
What about, were you surprised how quick I came back from your text? You want to talk about that 96 game against the Steelers? And I was still having nightmares about Mary McGregor just as the text arrived in the gym. No,
I thought you'd say no. As soon as when I sent the message and told you what game it was, I thought you'd say no, straight up.
Look, I still talk today. In fact, people ask me, who was the hardest to mark up on? Who did you get most nervous when you were playing against them? And I've got two. One was Brad Fittler, who was what I consider the best ball running 5'8" of my generation. And then number two was Mary McGregor. Like, seriously, I used to have nightmares about Mary's. So for those that sort of don't fully appreciate how good he was, I think he came into the NRL late at about sort of 23, 24, played in the Illawarra competition. But 6'4", 6'5", ran as quick as anyone in a back line, had this massive sidestep, and then more frightening than that was the fend, So for me, all of 19, who did not appreciate that there was actually a contact side of the game in defence, was still learning my trade there. To mark up one-on-one against him was supremely difficult, I should say.
Yes.
So that game, although I was pleased kind of with how I went with ball in hand, I think you might remember, because you might have been the first player to come up and give me a pat on the back afterwards, say, don't beat yourself up too much. I was depressed at how easily he just did away with me when he had the ball. Great player, not my greatest memory, but marking up against him is kind of, as I say, I still talk about it today. It was fearful.
Yeah, well, you'll see some real class from Benny Ikin in attacking that game. And I've got to put my hand up right now. There's no way I can sit here silent. I did contribute a little bit. I was on Benny's inside a couple of times there, and I didn't help you too much, mate. So, but it's all in the past. We did end up winning the game, so it would have been, you may not have gotten through the night if we hadn't won the game.
What a fearsome defensive line that would have been for opposition sides, JT, looking up and seeing Taylor and Ikin side by side.
That's right. Wonder why they kept going there.
Yeah, that's right.
You guys did it right. Don't doubt that.
Now, Soto, I quizzed you about the forward pack before, and you're pretty general, which is great, not wanting to single anybody out. But let's just talk about the back row. Okay, Gary Larson, David Fairley, and Billy Moore, pretty impressive. And I'll say this, that the North Sydney Bears forward pack was probably the reason that I decided to come across to the Bears. But you played so much footy with those guys. Gee, they were talented.
Oh, JT, brilliant. Amazing. Like, it was such a good balanced trio. Like, you just knew, I felt safe going on the field with them. Because they'd just do anything to cover for you if you didn't do the right thing, or you just knew where they were going to be. Three great people. Three people I'm really proud to say they're my friends. But just, they do things, and it just really just lift the team or something rather. I remember earlier on, Larry even had a grubber in his game, and I think Steve Martin said, put it back in his pocket. It was actually quite effective. What a three blokes having your back, right? Like, as you say, they're amazing.
Yeah, Billy Moore and Gary Larson, when I remember back, both skillful but were renowned workhorses, right? And I think that they gave the certainty, as you did, Soto, you filled a similar role in that you just held the middle, right? You held the middle. But if I'm being honest, looking at that game against the Steelers, I'd forgotten how good Dave Fairley was.
Oh, same.
So he's like, what is he? Is he 115 kilos?
He was a big man.
Big man.
Mobile big man.
Good leg speed. He could play through the middle. He could play on the edge. JT, I know he was the player that you used to go to a lot. What was that play we used to have? Was it called a 100? We kind of line up on one defender, skip to the next defender, and often your straight man was Dave Fairley, right? And I know I was often the guy at the back or the tip, right, on the end of that play. And you just knew if Daisy was in the play that he was attracting in more than one defender, because that's what it took to get him down. And so beyond that, beyond being a devastating ball runner, who's quick and big, the other thing that caught my eye in that match was his skill. Now, he could play before the line and in the line. And I'm wondering to both of you, do you remember, did you have him as a bit of a go-to guy when you're out there in the field?
Definitely for me, because it was his height and his skill was a big factor. So if I would give him the ball into the line and there was only one defender, then you knew that if someone else was coming through, usually yourself or Mickey Butner on the other side, then he's a big chance of getting that. And you'll actually see something like that in this game where he gets one away to Brett Dallas. It's really impressive.
Yeah, JT and Benny, he was always a good player because you know there's a ball coming around him. Like if he'd done a hit up, you knew something was possible. So you say Ben could play in the line, play after the line too. And he was just a big man, big and mobile. And then going on to Billy, workhorse. I think his ball game kept developing, and Billy's ball player surprising. And going back to Gary, Larry was just Larry. What a legend, you know. Could play the ball. And, you know, he was an underrated ball player. You know, people see these guys as just workhorse, tough people. The three of them were great ball players.
Yeah, they're all skillful, eh? You know, the other thing I remember about Daisy is, you know, for someone born and raised in Gosford, how extravagant his tastes were. You know, at one point I saw him turning up into training in a Porsche. Anyway, I can't remember who I was with, but I'd found out that he built a house, you know, in Gosford. Do you remember this? And he took his extravagant tastes and built a house, an extravagant house. It was about 4 doors up from his parents, remember? So you drive into the street, and this is my memory of it. It was one of those streets that still didn't have proper gutters, right? So it was sort of bitumen, gravel, grass, you know, with the occasional drain. And then halfway down the street, there was this blue and purple mansion that belonged to Dave Fairley that he built about 3 doors up. Was his dad Trevor Fairley, or was that his brother?
No, I'm not sure if his dad, mate.
Okay, I think it was anyway. So
he was not leaving. He was not leaving the Central Coast, Benny.
What's that?
He was not leaving the Central Coast by hook or by crook.
Well, and this house, seriously, he had a cinema in this house that was bigger than most houses on that street.
Well, yeah. As you said about the style of the street, you know, tar, gravel, grass. If you pay $2.50 for the block of land, you can put whatever house you want on it.
Correct. Yeah. Too clever, eh?
They reckon that he asked Paul Green if he could be his assistant coach remotely. Didn't go down too well.
From Gosford.
Yes.
Well, he could now. He could do it on Zoom like we are.
Exactly. Now, just a reminder, we talk about that back row, but I want to ask you guys, Chris Caruana plays at lock in this game that we're talking about. I don't remember him playing many times at lock, let alone being named at lock in our team. Do you guys?
Never. No. That surprised me. In fact, when I watched him score the try, so you sent me through all the clips. You're always going to be a coach, aren't you? I think I've got about 20 clips on my phone. And then I got to the one where Smoke scored the try, and I actually asked myself the question, where was he playing? And then you followed up with the note, you know, just be aware, Smokey was playing lock. Yeah. So, I mean, goes to Soto's point, he could play anywhere, right?
Yeah, likewise. And I did the same thing, JT, and I went, is that Smoke in 13? Or was it Flo? And no, it's Smoke, you know, and he the ball. And he was, let's say that's how good he was. He could fit in anywhere, but I just couldn't believe it. He was locked. And I do not remember before or after him playing there again.
No, same, man. You know, you mentioned Flo there. Check out that try that Smoke scores because Flo is just...
He laid it on.
Superb. Yeah. Superb in the way he does that. And the other bit that I did notice is, Soto, you must have left the field before the game was over, and then Smoke was at dummy half. I remember him playing a little bit of dummy half in a semi-final against Parramatta at the Sydney Football Stadium too. One time he scored a try, or I might have scored it. He passed it to me. All right, boys. What else? Is there anything else to talk about? Because honestly, we could do this for hours. Benny, you got anything else to do?
Yeah, listen, I think for me anyway, you can't have a North Sydney Bears podcast, whatever you want to call it, and get a guest on and not have the chance to talk about Flo, the great Greg Florimo. I grew up with Flo as one of my heroes. So I said before about the Queenslanders attracting me to the Bears and the professionalism of the place when I did that visit that one particular day. But I have to admit, I had a soft spot thinking that I was going to be able to line up with Greg Florimo. I mean, you guys both know him well. You've played with him. You've watched him effectively be the heart and soul of that club for as long as I was there, and still to this day. My personal view as a teammate, watching him as a player, is that there wasn't anything that Flo couldn't do. So much so that I was there. It was in my time at the Bears that Flo got that perfect 10 in rugby league week. Yeah. I played another game where Flo fell off his motorbike. Do you remember that on the way to the game? Crashed his motorbike, come out and got man of the match. And I'm just thinking, mate, is there anything this bloke can't do? But I just thought it appropriate, listen to all the players that we discussed, that I sort of put on record just how lucky I felt to be able to play with Flo, and, how much he means to the club way back then and even today. So it was a stellar career, and he's given so much to so many people, me included.
Yeah, awesome, Benny. If your memory does seem to be really good, and right at the present time, Flo is frantically looking for the videotape of that game where he got 10 out of 10 so we can do a podcast on it. So send it through if you've got it. He'll be very, very happy to watch it.
Okay, and do the commentary, I'm assuming, too, yeah.
I'll tell you one thing was using Mario's soap and towel one day at training.
Oh.
About the motorbike, I've never seen Flo leave training so quick.
No, Flo got in trouble for using Mario's soap from Mario's wife.
In his towel.
That's right.
He just wiped himself all over.
He would dry himself with Mario's towel, but then one day he used Mario's soap, and then he deliberately left a little red hair on there.
Colour, of course, right?
Anyway, so the day that Flo got his revenge, Mario was laid out of down from warming down after training. Very professional, Mario. And the whole
chewing Pete's ear off about something.
The whole team was still sitting in the dressing rooms waiting to see what happened when Mario opened up his bag and realised that Flo had filled it with about 200 cakes of soap. 200. Flo had been asked to replace Mario's soap that he used because Mario had to throw it in the bin by Mario's wife, and he replaced it with 200 cakes of soap.
Oh, God bless him.
Yeah. Rebecca rang up and gave to him. Rebecca rang up and even rang Steph Florimo and said, "How dare your husband touch my husband's gear?"
Stop it.
And what he left on that soap was disgusting.
Awesome stuff.
Okay, I'm just going to say that. Look what I'm wearing today.
The shorts and the boots.
And the boots and the jumper. You said to gear up in Norse gear, so I'm ready to play.
Yeah, you did a few push-ups before you took that photo, right?
No, I've just got a couple of tea towels in there.
Yes, nice. Hey, listen, guys, I can't thank you enough for your time. It's been really awesome. As we've said, the game will be on 12 p.m. tomorrow, Friday the 15th, on Fox Sports or Fox Footy and Fox League, right?
Yeah.
I need someone who knows what to do when I'm doing this sort of thing.
NRL 360 is going to be back soon.
Is it? We don't need it. Last point, remember that hopefully you're loving some of this stuff, and we're brought to you by Joe Mooser from Stonemasons and Landscapes, and also the Norse Group. And thank you, Mark Soden and Benny Ikin. Really appreciate your time, as I've said. Catch you later, boys.
Go the Bears.
Great to see you.